your water. But a lot of it just depends on the stage that the fish are in. Now, these fish are going to start using the back of these coves here anytime the water temperature is really above about the mid 50s. So I normally like to come about halfway back in, and I start about, shut my boat about halfway in, and I start fishing about 2/3 of the way back in, fish all the way to the back and come out the other side. So let's talk about the technique. Okay guys, there's a couple different things to consider when you're fishing the back of a cove. First of all, these areas get hammered. It's like if you watch people fish in the springtime of the year, the first thing they do is run to the back of these coves. That's just where everybody fishes because that's where a lot of the fish are at. Given that, these areas get a lot of pressure and the fish are very sensitive and wary. One of the things you're going to find out about fishing the back end of a cove, the fish get super educated and they're super spooky, especially as the springtime goes on. So always remember that when you're fishing the back end of these coves, you're fishing for a different personality of fish. The fish, for example, out on these points here and on the main lake, they're not going to be near as wary and feel insecure. But when you get up in this shallow water here, especially that clear shallow water, these fish are spooky. And when they come in here and they hear trolling motors and electronic pings and outboard motors shutting down, trolling motors plopping into the water, they get really, really skittish. So one of the things you have to remember is you need to make long casts and you need to be really stealthy. So what I like to do when I come to the back of a cove is I shut my boat down a long way before I get to the back. And I slowly start idling back in there. And once I get about halfway back in, I slowly and quietly put my trolling motor in and I just slowly work my way back to the back. Once I get to the appropriate depth that I'm fishing, whether it's in the middle or on the banks there, I'll start making long casts, just making repeated long casts. First thing that I usually do in the back end like this in the spring is I'll throw a fluke or floating worm, trying to get any aggressive fish. If I don't catch any on that, that's when I slow down with like a shaky head or a wacky rig or a Ned rig or some type of a Texas rig bait and, fish a little bit slower with it. And another thing about this is you don't really have to spend a lot of time in there, because normally if these fish are back in there, it's not gonna take long to get a bite if there's one in there. It's like I usually go back in here, I'll make 10 or 15 casts, pull the trolling motor up and run around to the next one. Another thing that you need to do is pay close attention to the time of the day, because in the springtime of the year, based upon your water temperature and your water clarity, there's going to be bite windows. Now, some of those bite windows are early in the morning. Some of them can be up in the day a little bit. If you're fishing in the earlier part of the spring,